Welcome to Prime Life. We call it Retirement 2.0. Leave each episode with tips and new ideas to help you navigate retirement in our new age. It's your time. Make it count.
This podcast is for educational purposes only. It is not intended as medical, investment, or financial advice. We do not sponsor or endorse any of the individuals, companies, products, or services featured on this podcast. Any statements or opinions expressed are of the individual who makes them. We hope you enjoy the episode.
Hi, my name is Mary Crean, and welcome to the Prime Life podcast. We're here always talking about living longer, living better. And today's guest, who I assume you will all love, is Nick Shelton. He is retired at age 49, and he thought, I've made it, until he hit a wall that success couldn't fix. Now he helps other men who've lost their sense of purpose rebuild their confidence, direction, and life through something he calls the reset button. Nick, welcome to the Prime Life podcast. Do tell our audience a little bit about yourself and about the reset button.
It's a pleasure to be here. Thank you, Mary, for having me. And yes, I started off my career, with the aim of hopefully doing well and retiring early, and I did that, and so I won, so to speak. But at the same time, nobody prepared me for what comes after that. So I even though on paper I looked successful, I still felt really empty and depressed and like I had lost my purpose just because my identity was wrapped up into my career. And then so when I didn't have that anymore, it was like I was using a currency that was no longer accepted. So I hit that slump, but after a while, I had to develop a way to get out of it. And so that's how I came up with the reset button. I was the guinea pig, and I work well with systems. And so I developed a system, a 6-phase protocol to get out of it, because there was a time where I said, if I only had a reset button that I could hit to reinvent myself, well, why don't I do that now? So I did that, and that's what brings us here.
That's a great story. It's also very, in some ways, a little bit alarming. I totally agree with you. You saw it on paper. You're like, wow, look, I made it. I won. But
Yes.
then you felt a little bit empty. So that's a lot for individuals to take in. And many maybe perhaps have been in your shoes or are in your shoes. So can you break it down in small chunks so that individuals can see what would they do first, second, and third, perhaps, to get out of that slump?
Right. So and I'll also look at it like, so say an Olympic athlete, they train their whole lives and then they go to the Olympics, and then if they're too old or whatever it is where they're not going back, okay, what do you do now? Your whole identity was this. And so basically what we have to do is we have to, it starts off with an audit. You have to see where you're at, because you have to admit something's wrong. Hey, I need help. Something is wrong, because let's say for me, and what some of your listeners might relate to, is that nobody knew, since everyone was looking at me like, oh, you did it. Nobody knew that I was hurting and that I was lost and depressed. Everyone just assumed that I was great, even my own family. So my family wasn't saying something's off with you. No, nobody noticed. And that made it worse, because then it feels, this guilt. Like everyone's looking at me like, oh, I want to do what you did. And then I'm supposed to say, oh no, I have a problem. I'm depressed. There's issues. It's really hard to admit that to people that only see the victory. And so you have to first recognize that it is a problem, that you need help, and then starts off with the audit to see where you're at, what you have, because you can't fix anything until you identify where the drift was, what's broken, and see what you have. What are the things that you can carry forward, and what needs to be left behind in this new life.
So I would guess that highly successful individuals like yourself can perhaps mask and hide what they're really feeling. You referred to something as the quiet collapse. You also mentioned that your own family members didn't see anything awry with you. So
Right.
can you talk a little bit more about how you, after you've done this audit, then what's next? What do you do, or what do you say to those around you so that, number one, perhaps you don't frighten them?
Yes.
And also, it doesn't sound like the victim mentality, because before you and I hit the record button, I said to you, Nick, I love how positive you are. I can't even imagine a Nick Shelton being down in the dumps, if you will.
Right. And I'd look the same. I'd still be glowing and still, but inside. To answer that question, I would say to not alarm your family or your friends. What I did was I would say, I need a new mission. I need a mission. I need a new North Star. I feel like I have to find I have to find my purpose again. And you don't have to, I guess you could be crying when you say it, but you don't have to be. But you could, just to let them know that you are going to be doing some work to try to get reoriented and find that new thing, so they will have an explanation to your behavior when you're doing, the audits, and then the next step. So letting them know, yes, I need to find a new mission. And then what you're going to do personally is you're going to honor the old you, honor and release the old you, and to make room for this new one. Because there's phases in this where I feel like that first part of life is kind of like the achievement. And so your identity is wrapped around like what you do and how well you do it. And then the next phase is different. It's more relationship based. So I look at it like being a warrior out on the plains, and then being one of the village or tribal elders in the tent. And so everyone trains you to be the warrior out on the plain. Go do the thing. But no one ever says, oh, this is how you, after you have all this knowledge, now we need you here in society to dispense some of it. So and you can still, because people say, I still can go out there. Yes, we understand you can still go out there, but you're more valuable in the tent dispensing your knowledge than you are to us out on the plain. So it's switching to that more relationship based phase of life.
So you're really mentoring individuals too through their journey, just like you had to figure out your journey. So I don't want to put words in your mouth, but perhaps you may have felt like, well, I wished I knew then what I know now. And so you're trying to help others not necessarily go through that, where they do feel like, number one, I'm the only one going through this. What's wrong with me? But that there is a way through it to help others. It's that wisdom piece that you are now really leaning into. I'm sure you were doing that at your past job.
Yes.
You're probably doing that as a leader, as a manager of others. But
Yes.
This is definitely a new part to your life. We have people on this podcast all the time that talk about retiring and then unretiring, or
Yes.
people that know that there's another chapter left because people are living longer and living better. And so, okay, what does that mean? Can you tell us a story or two that you would like to share about someone that you've worked with using the reset button?
And we'll get that answer after a brief word from our commercial sponsors.
NASA is always working harder to be your carrier of choice. We offer insurance products that can help you meet your retirement goals, such as protecting your savings, securing lifetime income, or paying for healthcare costs. We're dedicated to providing best-in-class service and are keeping things simple, and we'll have your back. We have around 400,000 policyholders and contract holders and have been doing this for a long time, 170 years, but we remain humble enough to always try to improve. For more information, visit nfg.com. Nassau insurance products are issued by Nassau Life and Annuity Company of Hartford, Connecticut, Nassau Life Insurance Company, East Greenbush, New York, or Nassau Life Insurance Company of Kansas, Overland Park, Kansas. Subsidiaries of Nassau Financial Group. Products are not available in all areas. Policyholder counts are for all Nassau companies as of September 30th, 2022, and are subject to change.
Yes. So very recently, there's a gentleman that was going through a very terrible divorce. So it's not always just about just the retirement. It's when a major shift happens in your life and you have to reorient yourself. And so he was going through this big divorce. And so he was used to, living in this magnificent giant house with all the toys and tucking his kids in at night, reading bedtime stories to, now he's in a studio apartment and he sees his kids on the weekends. And once again, that identity thing, he was this, and everything that he saw himself as was this family man. And now that is shifted. And so now he was struggling with this new life that he did not necessarily choose, like, I'm going to make like me choosing to retire. He was like, oh, welcome to your new reality. This is your life now. So, it's the same steps that I had him do. Is first, he said, I have a problem here. I don't know what's going on. I have to rebuild from scratch. Okay, we can do this. I've been through a divorce before myself many years ago. I have an excellent relationship now, but I know I've been there, so it's not just theory. I'm talking the walk, or whatever they say. So they are walking the talk.
You got it right. Walking the talk.
Yes. So we had him do an audit, like what are we working with now, and what's the situation that we're dealing with, so we can just shine some light on everything and see where we're at. And then we honor what he had before, and we release that, and then we rebuild. We take the pieces that we want to carry forward that are going to be useful, discard the stuff that's not going to be of use to us in this new life, and then we're going to start dropping things in. So I look at it like if you were writing a movie screenplay, or writing a play or a movie, and you had to develop a character. So now they have certain things about them. We can do this for you. And we won't make it completely not aligned with you, but we'll pick, okay, so we're starting your life over right now. That's kind of like the reset button. We're starting you over. We're carrying a few characteristics over, but what would you like it to be, this new chapter? So we can just plug in, all the little key factors, like, are you still a morning person, or are you a night person now? What's your morning routine look like? What do you eat? What kind of music do you listen to? Because you can change. I felt like that first half of my life, and this gentleman too, I felt like I was given that, but then the second phase, I can create that. I can choose what I want. So for this gentleman, I said, well, what do you want to be? I know that, you can't go back to what you had before. That's gone. We released that, but we're going to develop this new person. And then once we get all the characteristics, then we're going to do kind of like a touchstone thing, what I call a uniform, but it's not an actual uniform. It could be maybe a bracelet or a necklace or a watch or something to remind you this is you now. So whenever you start slipping, which you will, you can touch the necklace and be like, no, this is my new personality. Then we're going to, I won't get too deep into this, but we'll introduce you to some new social situations. So for this gentleman, my default ones are a cooking class, a language class, and a dance class. And so now, instead of him, because so for this example, in the divorce, all of his social stuff was them, and their friends, but now he needs some new outlets. So now he's going to go into these. So like the cooking class, it's more intimate. You're talking with people, you're creating this dish. Dance class, you're touching somebody and you're dancing and you're moving around. And then the language class, you're butchering a language with some other people, and it's a bonding experience. So this way he's introducing himself, this new version of him, into these new social areas. So then that way we're reinforcing that identity. And now these people aren't knowing him as the previous family guy. They're knowing him for the first time from this new personality, and it kind of reinforces that. And now I'll take a break. So
how challenging is that for an introvert?
It is. It sounds a lot more challenging than it would be, because we put it in the steps. So I think of it like this. In the military, I was in the Air Force, and everyone's seen all the military movies. One similar thing is making of the bed. And how they structure it is that they break it down into such simple steps that whether you're a genius or the opposite of a genius, everyone can make the bed the same way because they have the steps. If you're introverted, shy, or socially awkward, we can still get you there. It won't be the same path, but we'll break it down into steps that not only you could do, but you would do. Because that was a big thing for me. Because you could say, just walk into the room and do this. And you're like, no, that's not what's going to happen here. So we have to break it down into smaller steps that you actually would do.
What type of an analysis do you do with individuals? Like, do they fill out a form? Do you ask them questions? Or how do you take all this information based on their background, their likes, their dislikes, and then put it into a plan? What's your process?
Oh, that's a very good question. I do have a very thorough questionnaire that I have them go through, but then also, because that just gets some things, and a lot of times that's overthinking, and then so it's I try to be a very good listener, and that's one of those things with the introvert, shy, and socially awkward people are usually very good listeners. And I'm not saying I'm the best listener. My current girlfriend would say that I still have some improvements I could make, but I try to, when I ask people what their situation is, how they're feeling, I try to listen, and so what they're saying and then what they're not saying also. And then we try to put together a plan, and we can always adjust it because it's not like a one size fits all thing. We take what's working, and different people learn differently. And also some people are and motivated differently. So some people are more deadline. Some people need a lot more accountability, and some people need the more of there's the carrot and the stick. So some people need a little more carrot, some people need a little more stick. And so yeah, we have to figure that out. But that's just on asking questions and trying to be a very good listener and picking that up, and then we adjust it as needed.
Yeah, absolutely. I would say it could also be what someone's not saying, their body language, whether you're on Zoom with them or whether you're in person with them, you can usually determine. I have a strategy, and it's not necessarily to do what you do, but I like to ask the same question different ways about 3 times to hear what answer that I get.
Yes.
And then go from there to know should I probe a little bit more or should I not? Is that consistent what they're saying? Just to get an idea if what someone is sharing with you is really the situation at hand so you can help them better.
Right. Yes, it is. And I think that it's that making them feel comfortable too, because when they're comfortable, then they'll open up a little bit more and share a little bit more also. One thing from earlier that I'd like to retouch on those phases is in that achievement phase, it's usually clear when you can see the structure and when you're doing well and when you're not. But in the other phase 2, the more relationship based, it's not as clear when you're doing a good job. You like so there's certain things like, so if you have if you're mentoring someone and they ask for advice on something short term and you give it to them and they say yes, that worked, and then their victory is your victory. But then there's other things that are more long term when you are out there building those relationships. And I like to think of it like, if you are a parent and you are have a teenager and you're just like, okay, this is the punishment that we're thinking, but is this going to ruin this kid, or is it going to end up being good? And you might not know for 10 years, 15 years, and be like, oh, okay, yes, it worked out. Or, oh, okay, now they're in therapy and now they're going to just be talking about that. So there's some things that you just have to wait to see. So it's measuring these things once you're in that relationship phase can be a little more challenging than the more black and white achievement phase, where you're like stimulus response, so I just wanted to put that out there.
Is this like an exercise program, so to speak, where you have to do things consistently over time to see the results?
Yes, well, so it's not like it
just a thought I had.
Yeah, it's not an instantaneous boom, you are completely fixed, but we can make some really good strides at the beginning to change your life and to get you on the way. But it does require maintenance to make sure that you don't slip, because the old you, it does not want to just give up easily. It wants to come back. So, and depending on how strong that is depends on the individual, because some people might really take on that new personality, the new them, and just run with it and barely have any slips. And then some people, their old them is strong and it's coming. And so it's not just like we snap our fingers and then the change is there. It does take some work. And so I guess it would be sort of like an exercise program, and it's popping in my mind now. Some people, when they exercise, they're called hyper responders. So they go to the gym a few times and they look great. What? How often do you go? And then there's other people. I have this old childhood friend that would go all the time, and you would never know that he ever went. And you go, are you even going? He goes, no, I'm going. And so it takes a while. And then finally, it took years, and then he got the physique that he was looking for.
Right.
But so it just depends on the person. But yes, exercising is a
good...
I
love that analogy that you gave. And I think that's fair, because we all know people that fit the profiles that you shared. And so that could really apply to, changing and growing and kind of reinventing yourself. What has been the most surprising part of this work that you've been doing?
I would say that, well, to me, I would say just the people that I meet, just the wide variety, just because I think in our minds, we might just think this only affects just this one category of people. But, it's really broad. So when I started this work, I was just thinking, okay, well, I will just talk to men that have recently retired, and they'll fall into this category. But then there's, divorced men, and then there was, people that were just going through like a midlife crisis, and they said, can you help us too? Oh, there's a lot of people that it didn't, because they, you're supposed to niche down to something, but there's all these people that, well, I feel this way. I would like a reset button. And then also, my site's called Reset the Man, but there's women that are like, well, can I reset too? Yes. And the funny thing about it is, because initially I was just like, well, I'll just help men with this, but because I know I understand it. But then it turns out that a lot of women, I think it's an advantage, are faster to ask for help with something. Mm-hmm. Guys want to just be like, I'll figure it out. But women will be like, okay, I'm going to need some help with this. And they are very open and receptive to asking for help and getting the help that they need. So that has also been a big surprise because, so the short answer is I thought it was going to be a much more narrow portion of the population. It turns out that it's a lot more broad, people that are feeling lost and like they're invisible, not being seen, and that they would like to reinvent themselves.
You bring another interesting point that you just said about feeling invisible and not being seen. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then I want to actually touch upon, I did read in the information you sent over to me that, men perhaps, again, try not to generalize, do want to tough it out, or they think they can perhaps, and perhaps they don't raise their hand more aptly than women to say, I need help. But again, don't want to generalize. But I would love for you to talk a little bit about that invisible piece, people that feel invisible and not seen, and what does that mean, and how do you work with individuals like that?
Yes. So, and that also crosses over into when I was helping introvert, shy, and socially awkward people as well before, and I'm still helping those also, if any of your listeners fall into that bucket. But it's this thing where, so in my career, I felt like, oh man, I'm somebody here. Everybody knows who I am in this, field. But then after that, I'm just wandering around the grocery store looking to see if something's on sale today. I'm just some guy and nobody notices. It just vanished. And even my family, it just seemed like, everyone's, oh, he's fine. He's just over there. And it was like I was fading away. The reference, it's a really deep reference. Only part of your audience might get it. But in the movie Back to the Future, Marty McFly is in the Enchantment of the Sea dance, and he's waiting for his parents to kiss, and he's looking at the Polaroid, and he's fading away in there. And that's how I felt, like I was fading away. And I just seemed invisible in so many people, especially. So if you go back to the introvert, shy, and socially awkward people, a lot of times feel invisible in their own lives, even without retiring or anything, just day to day. And this could happen. So you don't need the divorce, you don't need a midlife crisis, and you don't need to retire to feel invisible. And maybe, I think it's really painful. It was to not feel like you're being seen. And so I try to make sure that I do that. So for example, when I go to Chipotle, the restaurant where you get the burritos, it might be busy, and when I get to the front of the line, they say, "What can I get started for you?" I say, "Wait, how are you? How are you today?" And I wait for them to answer, and I have a brief little conversation. Sure, the people behind me are like, "Come on, let's go," but I want to make sure that they're seen because many years ago, I worked at Subway sandwiches as a sandwich artist, and people would just treat you like you're a robot or something. Just this, and nobody ever saw us as people. And so I want to make sure that I see these people as human beings, and so they feel that. And so it's a huge problem that we have out in society right now that I think a lot of people are not feeling seen. So part of this rebuilding yourself, I like to try to help people rebuild themselves in a order that they will feel seen and will be recognized out in society, even if they are shy, socially awkward, or if they've removed themselves from the workforce or whatever it is. It's so important and nourishing for the soul just to be seen as a human being.
Well, I love that. I think that's fabulous that you're doing that. And I believe we need more people to do that, to pause. Like, for example, I was jogging the other day. I have to admit it. There I was, my usual route. And there was a gentleman on a ladder. I assumed he was retired based on the way he looked, and he was scraping away some paint. And he looked at me and I looked at him. Good morning. Good morning. And then he paused and he said, "How are you today? It's a beautiful day, isn't it?" And I didn't expect even a few sentences, because some people don't even lift their head up and say good morning or hello. The analogy that you used with Chipotle and Subway. And by the way, I want to go back to what you said about Back to the Future. So I have a son, his name is Evan. He does a podcast. He's been doing one for 10 years. It's called Spoiler Piece Theater. He also wrote a book on 80s movies. He loves the 80s. Not sure why, but anyway, that's like one of his number one movies. So when you said that, I was like, I totally know what you're talking about. Some of our audience may not, but I think that was a really, really great analogy that you used. Someone in a photo kind of fading away. And I love that you are vulnerable enough to say and share with our audience what you went through and how you felt. And you have a family, and some people don't really have anyone. And so that makes it, I think, even another layer beyond that they don't have someone to talk to, which is why it's really important that there are individuals like yourself out there willing to listen, good listener as you are, Nick, and you're willing to help them be honest with themselves, but also understand that it's not one and done. Like there's a lot more life ahead of them.
Yes.
And why not do what you love or be who you maybe didn't think you could be, or whatever that was in your head that was telling you to just stay where you are and you're going to be, don't rock the boat, so to speak.
Right. And if I can just throw a thing in real quick on the family part, there was also a part where with teenagers, and I know that this it's not just me, this happens to quite a few people. So some people feel when you mention the family, well, you can talk to them. But at the same time, some teenagers will also act like you do not exist, that you are not there. So that's another thing where you're like, hey, do you want to do something? Nope. And so like the kids they want nothing to do with whatever I'm doing. I feel like I'm pretty cool, but apparently I'm not. So at least in those circles. So yeah, that's another thing where you're like, well, they used to want to do stuff, but now, they don't. So just because the family's there, that can also, it doesn't automatically mean that they are receptive to wanting to spend time and hang out and listen. So you have to also be able to reframe it in your mind, so then it's not going to be digging at you. And so I know that my brother had told me, he said, well, if you look at it the other way, where if they were constantly bugging you and saying, hey, we want all of your time, then you'd say, I just need a break. I need a break from these guys. But he said, so if you look at it like that, and now they're doing their thing and they don't want your time, so you're lucky that they're not asking you to do a bunch of things. So then that reframed it in my mind, like, oh, wait a minute. I went from, why don't these kids want to hang out? And now I'm like, oh yeah, go do your thing. Do you need a ride over there? And then you guys do your thing. And then I have time to explore my stuff. So just wanted to touch on that family thing, because I know that people that don't have a family, at the same time, they say, oh, if only they were here, they would be wanting to spend time with me. Not necessarily, so you're not, go ahead.
No, it's a great point. And I think we've all been there. When you were speaking, I was like, oh, yes, that sounds very familiar. My husband and I talk a lot about, and he does specifically, he always says there's the long game too. And I do believe when you raise adults or young adults to be self-sufficient, they in fact become self-sufficient, which means they do not need you as much. And I know I hear some of my contemporaries say that, oh, their kids have moved back and they were happy for a little while. Now they're like, okay, no, move out.
Right.
And some of that comes with, again, wanting to spend time with you or not wanting to spend time with you and all of that good stuff. And I think that also helps to shape kind of where we are and how we can move through what we're going, what stage we're in with all of this. So with the reset button, and I know you said earlier you thought, okay, you're just going to help men, but now you're also helping women. You talked about the different life transitions that you've been involved in conversations with. which has been very interesting as well. What do you wish you knew now before you were getting ready to say, okay, I'm getting ready to retire. Look, I'm winning. I've won. Look at me. What perhaps did you overlook when you
Well,
were, getting to that next phase?
yes, that's a good question because so what I overlooked was I think that there's so much focus placed on are your finances okay? So for the retirement, everyone's just like, are your finances fine? So when your finances are, you're like, okay, finances are good. But nobody ever talks about everything else that's not that. Everyone just wants to know, are you going to have enough money to, uh, not have to get that as some kind of job that you don't want to get later down the line. And so I saw the financial picture and said, okay, we're good to go. But I did not think about, so my picture was just, oh, I'll move down to Mexico and I'll just get a sailboat and that'll be my life. But yeah, went down to Mexico for about 6 months or so, and then the wife didn't like it, and the uh, yeah, the, there's a lot of sitting around going, I'm here in Mexico and I need to do something. So yeah, I didn't plan. So I would say the first little section is like a vacation, but then you need to look at it a lot longer on a longer timeline, especially and even if you're not retiring as early as I did, even if you retired at say 70, you might still be around for 30 more years. And so you need to see, well, what is this going to look like? I'd say to answer your question, I needed to think about not just the financial part. I needed to think about what does this ideally look like, and look past a year. So I'd say people usually look at what they're immediately going to do, what happens after a year, and that would have most likely made a difference for me.
Great points. And we've had many individuals on Prime Life Podcast who have talked about one of the mistakes, if you will, that people do make in retirement or approaching retirement aren't the financial ones. It's the ones that you mentioned. Like,
Yes.
do you know anyone in Mexico? No.
Right.
So where are your social circles or community? How is that going to impact you? Okay, sailboat. Again, after a while, maybe it can get a little bit boring, maybe
Right.
not. Or if you're a golfer, how many times are you going to golf and not get tired of that? So I think those are all good things to think about. And believe it or not, we've had a lot of conversations on this podcast, as well as I know others are talking about it. Think beyond just the numbers, but think about your purpose, which you've touched upon today, your family, your friends. What do you want to spend your time doing? Because as
Right.
you said, you can only do so much sailing perhaps, or,
Right.
and then you're like, wait a minute, now what do I do? So as we're kind of getting near the end of our conversation, before I ask you the last question, what are a couple of key takeaways that you can leave with our audience that they can take action on in the short term?
Okay. First thing I'd say, do an audit. I know the word audit, people are like, oh, I don't like that word audit. No one wants to get audited, but this is a positive audit. Just kind of see where you're at, not just, with your finances, but see where you're at. Just what's good, what's bad, what's your whole, a personal audit of you. And so then that way you'll know, does something need a little more focus? Do we need to shine a little light on something? Because if you don't do the audit and you don't know what's going on, then it's hard to get ahead of it and start fixing it. So just a personal audit. And then the second thing is usually, and this is everyone, men, women, everybody, when we've been achieving in that achievement mode, everyone has something that they uh, cast aside at some point, something they used to really like. And you might have to take a while to think about it. It's like for me, I had to really look back and see. And so I'd say find out what that is and revisit some of those things. So, for example, I used to write poetry back when I was in high school, and then after high school, I didn't write it anymore. And then now, like, hey, maybe do I still like that? I don't know, because it got buried a long time ago because I didn't have time. But now I have time, so I can write some poetry. I used to want to. There's a time that I wanted to be an inventor. Like, do I still want to tinker with something and try to invent something? And then also, I wanted, when I was 10 years old, I dreamt of being a chef. And so now, well, let's break out some cookbooks and make something and see, does that still have that, rekindle that fire? So the number two thing is kind of look back, see what you kind of lost along the way in achieving and giving up for, your job or your family. There's something, just try to figure out what that is and kind of revisit some of those things, and that'll do you good.
Oh, I love that. I think that's great. So our final question is simply, Nick, you're a very successful guy. You've done some interesting things in your life, and you can really get up every day and do whatever you want. Why are you doing what you're doing with the reset button?
So one of my mission is to, I call it, be the angel. So there's a time I was sitting around and I said, do angels exist? I don't know. And if they do, how do I know I'm not one? I don't. So I said, maybe I can do miracles. I just can't do them for myself or for anyone that I know. It has to be strangers. So I said, I'm going to get up every morning, and when I open my eyes, just like this morning, I opened my eyes and I said, I'm going to make someone's day today. What's it going to be? Because I can't necessarily control my day, but I can absolutely make sure somebody has an outstanding day. And it doesn't have to be some over the top thing. It can be just a simple gesture, seeing someone as a person. It could be taking the time to listen to somebody that, has no one ever listens to. It can be something like, you pay for the coffee of the person behind you or something like that, or get someone gas at the gas station. There's all kinds of little ways, but like for me, I it's a mystery every day. Like, what's it going to be? I don't know, but I'm going to keep my eyes open and look for a way to make somebody's day every day. And so that's my thing. I call it be the angel. So that's my thing.
Well, I love that. It's like the random acts of kindness. I especially like that. So you and I have that in common. It's really cool to do something for someone you really don't know.
Yes.
And to see their face light up. And it could be that what you're doing for them is just extraordinary, and perhaps no one's ever done that for them.
Right. Oh, one thing I'll throw out an example. And this was back when I was actually working. My boss, I figured out when my boss's birthday was, and then I got a piñata, and I just filled it with candy. And then, he was like, I'm late for a meeting. And I was like, nope, stop. And I got this piñata. We hung it up in the break room and had him, hit the piñata and everything. And so he was late for his meeting, but he said, no one's ever done this for me before my whole life. He said, my parents barely acknowledged my birthday. This is the best birthday I've ever had. And he actually shed a tear. And, for me, I just thought it'd be fun to get a piñata for his birthday. But to him, I'm sure he will never forget that ever. And so it's these little things that, it wasn't a big cost to get a piñata. It's just that gesture for him to see somebody actually cared to do that. And so it's just these random things that can make a huge difference in someone's life. And so for the reset button, I'm trying to, anyone else who's struggling that feels I need to reset my identity, I need to reset my life, this is also a way that they can do that.
Well, I love that. I think that's your calling card. You are interested not only in helping people reset, but you're also on a day-to-day basis being that angel that appears out of nowhere to make someone's day just a little bit brighter. So I think that's great. Nick, if individuals want to get in touch with you, what's the best way? We'll put everything else in the show notes.
Okay. The best way, the fastest way would be my LinkedIn. profile that'll be in the show notes, I'm sure. But Reset the Man is the website. They can also get in touch with me there.
That sounds great. Well, I appreciate you joining me today. It was a fabulous episode. I'm sure our audience is going to love it. And for our listeners, thank you for listening. Please share the news about Prime Life Podcast. Like us, thumbs up, or tell us what you don't like, and we'll see what we can do there. Everyone, have a great rest of your day. And Nick, again, thanks for joining me today on the Prime Life Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
Remember to subscribe to the Prime Life Podcast anywhere you find podcasts. You can find all of our episodes, contact information, and more on our website, primelifepodcast.com. Stay connected with us. Follow us on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok.